kept his eyes ahead. The darkness was coming quickly now. He wanted to put his foot down, but Angela, that's her name, Angela, didn't like driving fast. When he started on this road, it had been sealed. Surely it would become more substantial soon. It was flattening out. All he needed was a glimpse of some streetlights or some evidence of a sheep station, an outhouse. But there was nothing. The nearest place is Border Town, she said. There's a turning 20k after that, but it sweeps round a range for 100k. She folded the map in half in one quick movement. This doesn't look like a road. She turned and looked back the way they had come. If you'd been away, you could have given me directions. What? So it's my fault? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I've been driving for over 4 hours now without a break. She folded her arms on the seat and paused a moment. Harry could feel pinpricks of sweat on his forehead. And why do you think you've been driving that long? Who planned the route? Who missed the turning? I thought this was right. I started off on a sealed road. There hasn't been a turn until now. I'd have seen one if there'd been one. But now she doubted him. His mind went back to the track that led up to the hill, to the sheep station. Perhaps what he'd seen was just another farm track, one of the 1,000 secret routes that led off into the deeper plains of the outback. So I'm to blame. She was nodding her head vigorously now. Even while I'm asleep. It's me, isn't it? Yes, I'm to blame. Can we just relax a bit, Angela? It doesn't matter. We'll go to the next town. I'll turn the car round. We've got enough petrol. He tapped the window over the fuel gauge. And if there's nowhere to stay? If there's nothing there but a petrol station and a caravan park, what if it doesn't exist anymore? What if it's a ghost town, Harry? What if there's nothing out here? It was at that moment that he saw them, just 10 yards ahead, gathering on the road. He put his foot on the brake, and Angela grunted as her chest hit lightly against the back of the seat. The car shook as it came to a stop with a hiss of grit under the tyres. A drift of dust shifted into the air ahead and moved through the beams of the headlights. They sat quietly for a moment, the sound of the engine rising and falling, struggling to keep firing now his foot was off the accelerator. Dingoes, said Angela in a whisper. There were 6 of them. They all turned their heads to stare, their eyes white discs of light. Harry made his breathing shallow as if he might disturb them. One of the dogs was bigger than the others. As it panted, its tongue hung between its front teeth like a loose slice of meat. It looked into the darkening desert to the right. Then it turned and moved into the roadside trees. The other dogs followed, moving off with a slow ease. I think we should turn around, Harry, said Angela finally. We're in the middle of nowhere. Her voice was flat and taut. Harry nodded his head. He watched the retreating animals as they gathered speed now, running between the low, dry bushes. For a short time he lost sight of them, but then he saw them again, moving fast among the barren trees. Because they were pale, and because the light was so poor now, they became transparent, the trace of animal outlines, the spirits of wild dogs. He put the car into reverse and pulled back slowly. The rear wheels dropped with a gentle thump as they rolled off the road into the roadside dust. The headlights shone through the trees. He put the brake on and sat forward, hands on the wheel, chin resting in the dip between 2 knuckles. His contact lenses had dried onto his eyes so that there was a faint, milky mist. He blinked, then squinted to help himself see. In the headlights, the thin, pale trunks of trees close to the car. One tree had grown into a bloated, grotesque shape. Its trunk expanded and split as though it had erupted, fallen eucalypts-like lengths of bone. The land rose up into a series of fluted mounds with deep fumaroles and basins, the valves of ancient volcanic activity. Can you see that? He pointed through the windscreen. Out there. I want us to go, Harry. No, look, Angela. She leant forward again. It's a car. That's right, said Harry. He had seen wrecks on the side of the road a number of times since leaving Sydney, some of them 50 years old or more, abandoned on a disused track, in the corner of a field of pasture, in the shade of an outbuilding. Something about this one was different. From where he sat, it looked as if the car had been driven into a tree. He pulled on the lever and the door clicked open. Harry, what are you doing? I'm just going to look. Then she was back, leaning on the passenger seat. What? I'm going to see what's in the car. It's a wreck, Harry. He pushed the door. It was heavy. He hadn't realised it till now. With the back wheels off the track, the car was on a tilt, and it took an extra effort to get it open. He stepped outside. The wind blew sand along the track. The creak of warped tree trunks like rope pulled taut. Sand sifted along the low-lying earth. What if the dogs come back? She hissed from inside the car. He reached in, under the dashboard, and took hold of a heavy-duty power torch. He tested its weight, like a club. I won't be long. He pushed the door to. He walked across the track. He took in the open air, the temperature beginning to fall at last. He walked slowly down the slope, dry earth breaking up and falling away from him. The underside of the cloud across the horizon darkening every moment, blooming the colour of blood, the colour of iron ore. The faint smell of manure from the dogs, from wild goats, from whatever passed here unseen at night. The ground flattened, small rocks like a Martian surface, tall and wiry tufts of grass, far apart from each other to show there had been no rain out here for a long time. He turned on the torch, stones rattling against each other as he disturbed them, his shoes sinking in the red dirt where the halo of light fell, walking through a sparsely planted orchard of dead trees. When he reached the car, in the blue shadows of the flumes, he stood for a moment. There was a deep hum in the air like tinnitus. A burnt-out four-door Nissan, resting with its front axle against a gum tree. A black flare up the side of the tree. The car had deep burn marks above the wheel arches where the tyres had burnt away. The exposed wheels resting in the dirt. A heavy, poisonous smell in the air of oil, melted plastic and rubber. He moved his light over the vehicle. Much of the paintwork had burnt away, the grey silver exposed. The metal in the dashboard had sagged, and there were oily pools of plastic that had run as liquid and had set with a dull shine. Grey and white ash hung like wax from wipers in the exposed steering column, and was deep as polluted snow in the footwell. The figure in the driver's seat was sitting with his head against the rest, his mouth open, a black, life-size effigy. There was another in the passenger seat. They were both sitting perfectly upright, but the one in the passenger seat had turned his head away. His arms were thin, his hands drawn up to his chest. Insects the size and colour of grass seeds moved over the interior, spilling out of holes indoors. Broken glass on the bonnet like pieces of ice. The sound of insects moved in and out like breathing. As Harry walked around the vehicle, the dark crust of earth broke under his feet. A Day of the Dead parade, skeletons sitting on skeleton seats, teeth blackened and exposed grins. Harry! He brought the torchlight round in an arc through the stark white branches, pointing it back towards the road. Angela was standing beside the car, moving from foot to foot. A sound came from a bird somewhere in the dark, something like, "Watch out! Watch out! Harry!" His head was beginning to throb with the smell of the wreck, a dull beat, a wave of heat, and slowly building nausea. "Harry!"